with regard to introducing people into the screenplay writing industry, among other things. He's a pretty busy guy down there, and sure looking forward to having him on his interview here today on our show. Koji, good morning. Good to see you, my friend.
Thank you for having me, Hal.
Thank you for being here, and I appreciate it. The topic of our conversation today, everybody, is the discussion of the January 7th fire as it ignited down there with the high winds coming across the Santa Ana Mountains. Unexpectedly, unprecedented type of devastation done to not only Pacific Palisades and Altadena, but a few other immediate areas around where Koji lived. Koji himself, family was put under an evacuation order. And the reason we have Koji on today to discuss this is because we want to share with you the impact that this had on the movie making industry that's down there in that area where the fire was rapidly approaching. So we want to turn this over to Koji at this time with welcome Koji to the show again. I'm so glad to have you. And, to let the audience know, Koji and I are working on a project together based on a true story of my past life where Koji is preparing it to be introduced to the movie making industry as a motion picture. And I'll let him talk about that a little later. But let's get into the fire, Koji, and what it's done and how it's impacted the Hollywood mainstream market down there that you're in.
Definitely. So when on Tuesday night, my son does strength training. He's a baseball player. And I was driving out to North Pasadena to pick him up. And I remember there was like a trash can that flew across in front of my car, like a big trash can. And I was like, wait, what is that? And that was kind of the first time I was like, I think this is different. This is not, a normal Santa Ana winds, and this is not the normal conditions. And then it just kind of started getting worse and worse, and trees started falling. And eventually we got home, and, the power was out. So everything right away, we kind of knew this was kind of bigger because the winds were, they were like, hurricane strength winds that were kind of coming off, and then everything kind of went from there. Everything started catching on fire, and once things start catching on fire around here, they kind of stay on fire. I mean, we had a lot of rain last year until like May, and then we haven't had an ounce of rain since then, and it's been hot, and so all that rain led to brush that's dry now, and then once it caught on, everything caught on fire. And, I'm closer to the Altadena, the Eaton fire than I am to the Palisades that are on the other side of feels like the country sometimes. But, the Eaton fire, what I would like people to know about the Eaton fire that's, interesting to me is that a lot of the places that burn aren't places that are traditionally places that would usually burn in a brush fire. They're places, they're way far away from the mountains. Not super far away from that, but they're far enough that you don't imagine it burning. If I lived in in the forest, you would think, okay, every 10 years it's going to burn. And that's part of, living in a forest. But a lot of the places in Eaton Canyon or a lot of places in Altadena and Pasadena are not places that you would traditionally think are going to burn in a fire. And once one thing caught on fire, then it kept jumping and jumping and jumping until it was pretty far down in Altadena.
How frightening is that? How unexpected is that? And, just to add a little input to my knowledge about the Santa Ana winds, back in the 1980s, I was serving time in the California prison system, and I ended up in a firefighting camp in San Luis Obispo. So we were trained for fighting these very fires. And I remember the Santa Ana winds breaking out. We were all called on an emergency fire that was heading towards, I believe it was the San Luis Obispo region itself. We were right there. We didn't have to go very far, but I was absolutely in awe at the power and the impact that wind generated the fires that we were fighting. And more than one occasion during those first days of firefighting down there, Koji, we could barely get out of there alive. I'm not kidding. We'd be on the front line, and man, all of a sudden you're just looking at everything with red, embers flying everywhere. And these weren't hurricane force Santa Ana winds like you guys had to deal with down there, Koji. This was also a different direction of the Santa Ana winds, if I understand it.
Yeah, it was a lot stronger than I've ever felt. I mean, I've lived in Pasadena all my life, and I've never felt it that strong. And it was kind of just coming. Usually the Santa Ana's hit us here, but we have the San Gabriel Mountains, right? That's where and usually that kind of stops that wind a little bit, so it's more of like a breeze. But this was coming, from those mountains toward the city. That's why the fire spread so quickly, was that it was coming over the mountains and it was kind of going through, and so it was much stronger than I've ever felt, and it was just it was madness, And then I think, when we got like evacuation, not warnings, like evacuate now. I think my son's phone is on a different network or something, because we like right away when I got that, I was like, okay, we gotta go. And so I put my dog in the car, I put my son in the car. I didn't even grab anything. I just got in the car, and then I was like looking around. I was like, I don't even see a fire around. Like I don't know why they're telling us to leave. And I was like, let me just drive around. And then I drove around for a second, and I was like, oh, we're fine. It must be a mistake. And then we went back home, but we started getting ready at that point. But yeah, like it was a kind of a crazy night, and it was.
Yeah, I can remember actually you and I were communicating at that time, and you had told me, well, we just went under evacuation order on it. So that's kind of interesting to hear the tail end of that conversation on the show right now. But I'll tell you something, when we were as a world watching this live and watching these massive winds just literally raping these communities, and seeing Pacific Palisades and seeing Altadena, I mean, you're talking within a few minutes, the enormity, the apocalyptic effect, if you will, on those communities just became so apparent. And I'll tell you something else, Gilgy. When I was working in a firefighting camp, when we weren't fighting fires, we were out there clearing brush. We were actively involved in fire prevention. So one of my questions to you is why? Why wasn't that done in that region? Why wasn't that prepared for? You had a dry season.
I think it was actually, oddly enough, I don't know if that was the cause of it, because the places that were catching on fire there was no brush around. I mean, they were just neighborhoods.
So it was just traveling embers that were coming through based on the force winds.
Fire was going so fast. I mean, that's why, like, if this was like Paradise, California, that's like in the middle of the forest, right?
Right.
That like catches on fire, everything's going to burn every time, right? But this was like, I mean, these are city streets. I mean, you see like there's like a market, there's like a school. I mean, they're not like these aren't rural areas. I mean, Palisades is a little bit more rural. I'm not rural, but there's a little bit more stuff there. But I mean, there are a lot of trees, and I think the trees ultimately caught it. But yeah, there's not a lot of brush. There's not a lot of things, and I don't think that had a lot to do with it. And just to kind of put it in perspective, I coach baseball. I coach baseball.
Yeah.
And the place I coach baseball, the high school, there's over 300 kids that lost their homes. I mean, it's just kind of crazy to kind of think about that, and how do they go to, like, how do you play baseball, let alone just go to school and live your life, after all of that.
How's your son doing with all of this? That's got to be pretty tragic to him, having friends that have lost their homes, and people that were affected that he knows and has in his life. How's he doing?
He's doing fine.
Good.
I know the first night we were a little bit. My wife for some reason wasn't answering her phone. I couldn't get.
Oh, that's not good.
And I was like, you have to answer your phone and just or text me back and tell me you're fine, because I was calling her, because it was pretty funny if you read the text. It's like the first one's like, it's pretty windy outside, and the next one's like, I think I just saw a trash can, and the next one's like, the next one's like, where are you?
My God.
It kept getting like more and more like, I don't understand. And then eventually it was like calling every 10 minutes, being like, hey, I don't know why you're not answering your phone call. And it turned out she was obviously fine. And I think at her work, there was like trees started going down and stuff. So she was dealing with her own stuff. But yeah, I remember for my son, that was his biggest stress, was like, where's mom? Is she okay? Yeah. And I'm like, I think she's fine. Let's just stay home until we figure it out, and all of that good stuff.
Well, on the humanitarian side of this thing, Kyoji, I was thinking those very thoughts about the families that were separated in the moment of that apocalyptic crisis, if you will, wondering where their loved ones were at, wondering where even their pets are at. Yeah. I understand that there was a lot of wildlife animals that were moving into the rural areas trying to evade the fire. And it was absolutely remarkable to watch this on news. And, I'm up here north of Seattle, Washington, and it's nothing but nice and wet and cold and everything. And I'm looking at this entire beautiful area that I'm pretty familiar with, just getting wiped off the face of the earth. And having had firefighting experience on wildland fires, I was so frustrated with why weren't there preventative measures put up? But you've answered that question.
Yeah. So I think, it was also unprecedented. I mean, everything was on fire. But I think the other thing that I think is different about this fire than other fires I've been through is that usually in fires, I'm like, I think I recognize that area. I think I might have driven through that at one point in my life. but like both in Palisades and in Altadena,
Sure.
these are places that I've spent time in. You know, I could
Yeah.
be like, I know I've been there. I know I've eaten dinners at those restaurants and hung out in those houses, and that's kind of shows you how much more, you know, not it wasn't even like how much more city these places were that they were like they weren't in these like really rural kind of in
Right.
the country areas, which is traditionally like a lot of that times of fires are. And that's how different this one was. Even, and I talk to constantly people in LA, and we all have that same like, oh my god, we've eaten there, we've hiked there, you know, like and not like backcountry and you know those places, you know, they're wildlife, and we recognize it, but it doesn't feel like home. And Altadena and Palisades and everywhere else, Malibu and all those places are places we've hung out and eaten and had fun in, and all of a sudden those are the places that are burned. And that's kind of what's different for us, you know, that for locals that's different than I think people on the news don't recognize.
Yeah, exactly. And that was why I asked you to come on the show today, so people could get a hands-on understanding, if you will, of the impact that it had, not only during the moment of crisis, but what it probably has today. And leading into my next question for you, how has it impacted the movie making industry, the people that work in the backgrounds of these sets, the people that travel from those areas? Are we seeing an impact in the industry?
Well, you know, we've talked about this already, but in terms of like the industry already was kind of in crisis. Like I think
Yeah.
that like people don't really know what's going on. They don't the way people used to make money in film and television is not the way they make money now. So things are already kind of in flux and kind of in trouble. And this is definitely not helping in terms of like trying to figure out what the next steps are. You know, a lot of, especially in the Palisades, there's going to be a lot more executives, and not just executives, but people that work in the industry, because it's on that side of town.
And actors and actresses.
And actresses. Yeah, all of them they're gonna, you know, they're missing, they're losing their homes. They're gonna be affected. But I think that what is done in the industry is just led a lot to more, you know, questions like, how do we, like, what does it mean to move forward? How does it mean to move forward? What do we need to do? How do we need to do it? And everything is just kind of in flux even more than it was before. And I think that's kind of the biggest change. We're like still like, okay, well, you know, because I think everyone, including me, was hoping that the new year, you know, last year was tough, but the new year we're gonna like, it's kind of gonna, we have to create content and make movies and TV and stuff, and things are gonna go. But now, you know, this kind of even put a little damper on that, and trying to figure out what we're gonna do and how we're gonna do it. No,
well,
you know.
One of the questions I have about that, Koji, is you have people like Angel Studios that are over in Utah. You've got Taylor Sheridan's Enterprises that are over in Texas. You have other studios that are out there that are developing film. Do the people that are working in the area that you're located at outside of Hollywood there, do they have reach out capability to take their projects, like our project right now that we're working on, creating a package to introduce to the media market for the motion picture that we've been working on for about 5 or 6 months now? What happens to projects like that? Because I'm sure I'm not the only one with the project out there in your area.
Well, look, like most of the films aren't being shot in California anymore anyway.
Right.
So, you know, like I think it's more like when I shot in New Mexico or Las Vegas or anything, most of the only people that are going from California to like Las Vegas are the heads of the department, right? The lead writer.
Okay.
Stuff like that. And then like in those, like in Utah and Texas or wherever, you have crews that are working those movies already. So those are happening. So that doesn't change. But it's more like, even, you know, like the funding of movies. How do you make like how are we going to pay for this? You know,
right.
We talked about this a little bit, but like, you know, like 10 years ago, there was like over 50 movies that were shot for over $50 million, you know, and they were adult comedies and adult drama and adult horror movies and action movies and all of that. And now you know, studios make 4 to 6 movies a year, and in that budget. You know, and now, like, you know, like the other thing is, before under 10 million was seen as low budget, and now a lot of the movies are under 10 million, you know. And so I think that the change in the industry has been like, well, how do we make money now? Because before, these people would make hand over fist with money in the theaters, right? And then and then they sell it on DVD, and then they sell it to TV, and then they do it the same thing on international. They do international theater, and then they do international DVD, and then they do international TV. And now with streaming, what it's done is that you cut out almost everything and you just go straight to streaming.
Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
You know, my heart really goes out to the filmmaking community that is based in the Hollywood area, though, because, you know, when I was watching these fires, I was thinking of you and me. I was thinking of AJ and of what we're trying to accomplish here to get this based on a true life story out, and how that's going to impact other people that are in your region, in that immediate vicinity, working on similar type of projects. So
also,
go ahead.
Let me just say one more thing. Like, I think there's also a misconception about creative, but Hollywood as well, is that everyone thinks that there's two kinds of people in the creative. There's one that's super successful, like Tom Cruise or Quentin Tarantino, or they think that we're super poor and that we live at, like, we're working at Starbucks or something. Nothing wrong with working at Starbucks, but that we're doing something else, right?
I understand.
But in reality, there's what people don't see is that there's a whole middle class group of creatives. Like, so there's a lot of actors that make good money, that could survive and live, don't have to work somewhere else, and just all they do is act. But they're also not Tom Cruise and famous, just like film directors and writers like me. Like, I'm not famous, but I make a living. I do my.
Oh, thing. You're out there, Koji. I've checked you out. You've got a pretty good. You got a good background, brother.
But I'm not, like, I could walk around, no one bothers me. You know.
Yeah, I get it.
I think that's what people don't see when they look at that people in LA. Like, I think a lot of times they think it's all famous people and we're all, like, billions of dollars. But in reality, these are just normal people living their lives, and they have a job, and their job happens to be cool, like making a movie or making a TV show or something, or being in a TV show. But they're just normal people, and I think that the more you look at, like, these people as normal people and just trying to make a living and trying to do what they like, make dreams happen, I think that there'll be a lot more understanding of it. And it's hard because, like, obviously you only see Tom Cruise, and you don't see the actor that's working every day and struggling and not making like $50 billion a year, Yeah.
And the people that are in the background sets, which are on a humanitarian sense, is what I was looking at today.
Yeah. Those guys, like, no one thinks about them. But what I tell people about, like, those guys on set is that if the makeup is wrong in a movie, the whole movie is not going to work.
That's right.
If the light is wrong, the whole
it's a little guy.
It's everything together. That's the magic of movies, and people don't understand is that it's all of it has to be on the same page, and if it's not, it gets messy. This is why, like, if it was as simple as throwing money at a project, then Disney would make a perfect movie every single time. But they don't, right? Not every Disney movie works. And the reason being is that everything has to be aligned perfectly, or else it doesn't work. And it's the same thing, and all these people that nobody thinks about are the people that make it work. And they all have to be aligned, from the makeup person to the intern to, assistants and everybody else. Those people, they're all part of it.
What about the other industries that are down there, like Universal Studios, Disneyland? I know the fire didn't land there, but there are people that work there that were impacted by these devastating fires. Are we looking at a recovery time insofar as tourism and tourist activity in these high-end visitation sites that people go to, like Universal Studios?
No, I don't think that there's any kind of there shouldn't be any effects. I mean, the air was bad for a while, but I'm pretty sure everything's kind of back to normal and stuff. I mean, Altadena is kind of a North Pasadena area that, very few people travel to, and the Palisades is a really nice neighborhood, but also, like, unless you live there, you're probably
Malibu.
Malibu is nice. I mean, Malibu tourism would be affected, but Malibu is not Universal Studios or
right
or anything like that. So I mean, that's kind of more like people go to Santa Monica, for example, and that's fine still at this point. And so I think it's more about the people living here, and the people those are the people who are going to be more affected than anybody else.
That's exactly why we put the show together today, my friend. We wanted to reach out about them, let the world know about them, and knowing that these people that go to work every day of their lives are so heavily impacted. Hell, right now they're scrambling to find a place to put their families. And the other thing, Koji, what's the status right now with the fires? Where are we at with them?
I think, in my area, the smoke or the air conditions are way better than it was. I believe that they're still burning, but it's controlled and not going in the direction of the homes. So I think that's really good. And I think every day on my phone, I'm getting alerts that the zones that are under evacuations are being opened up. So I think that people are
good.
But now you get a lot of, like, there's a lot of GoFundMe's going around because people have lost everything. I know there's a lot of there's a lot of organizations that are trying to help, like the Dodgers and other, like the Humane Society, and all of them are helping people. And I think that and the insurance is going to be an issue in California, because I know right before the fires, State Farm took away the wildfire or fire insurance from some of the people. So there's a lot,
Lord.
So.
Yeah, I also noticed that some of the reservoir, or that one main reservoir, didn't even have water in it to keep the fire hydrants capable for helping the firemen that were going on the front lines over there trying to fight and suppress these fires. What's the word on that?
California is, surprisingly, we're not in a drought like we were for 10 years or whatever. So I think that there's that, but we are a desert, and I think that ultimately we're not going to have like so much of the city was on fire. Like I was listening to a fire person, and they're like, if it takes, like, I'm just throwing out a number, like 600 gallons of water to put out one house, could you imagine what it's like if it's like 25 blocks? Like you never,
and 12,000 houses.
You just don't have enough. We'll never have enough water to like stop it.
Well, the other good news, though, Koji, is now that the winds have suppressed, we have aerial attack and aerial assault on the fires. And I remember when we would be fighting up there in the San Luis region and stuff like that, and they'd be dropping that pink oxygen depriving material on the fires, and it would hit us, and we're out there fighting the fires on the front line, and that stuff would literally slam us to the ground. It was so impactful. And I can't help but think, when I'm watching the news, going back 30 some odd years of my life, and go, good God almighty, am I glad I'm not out there on that front line, because I'd watch those drops being done, and all I could think about was the poor guys underneath that were getting slammed to the ground, getting hit by that stuff. but the benefit now is the Santa Ana winds have subsided. We now have aerial involvement, and that's what spread that fire in the first place, Koji. They couldn't get in there. They couldn't do any form of assault aerially, and that's the number one primary source of taking out those kind of fires. I remember well. That's we were out there in the front lines doing that.
And Altadena, what people don't know is Altadena is one of the few communities in the LA area, LA County area, where it was a traditionally African American neighborhood, where African Americans owned, like, I think 40% of the homes. And it's because Pasadena was redlined during the 60s, and they weren't allowed to buy in Pasadena, so they bought in the unincorporated Pasadena. So a lot of those areas are traditionally Black neighborhoods that have been owned by generations of families.
Saw that on the news. I saw that on the news.
And they're all taken away, and it's a tragedy, and we're really worried. Like, the thing I'm worried about is, like, I hope they don't have like these planned developments that move in there, and because the thing that like when you're there, all the houses were amazing. They're old. And they had a lot of character, and the worst thing that could happen is somebody comes in there and puts in like a planned community or something. But I could see that happening because
that's
so much devastation, and
Yeah, I've been up to Altadena. I've been in those areas too. I can visualize what you're saying, and I would really hate to see that geographically change as a result of people that are capable, if you will, of taking advantage of crisis events such as this, and altering forever the historicity of what that area once was. That's a really good point, Kyoji. I never even thought of that at all, but that's probably going to become a reality up there.
Yeah, I mean, it's called disaster capitalism, right? Like, whenever a tragedy happens, I mean, people, if you have a lot of money, you could, like, that's a great time to take advantage. I mean, these people, it's a lot easier to sell than to try to rebuild, and it's so you get enough desperate people, and all of a sudden everything changes a lot.
It's just unbelievable what happened here since the 7th of January. Absolutely shocking to me. And I don't know what more we can do as people with shows that are out there that where people are seeing. You've got to make sure also that if you're going to be putting money into any donation sites, to check and confirm the validity of those sites, because I noticed your governor and the mayor of Los Angeles were warning people about fraudulent sites. So what would you recommend to people that want to help and donate?
I mean, I think that
Red Cross, of course, is safe.
Red Cross, but I think that there are so many people that like I worry when you give money to big organizations that it doesn't get to the people that it really needs.
Right.
So like I give my money, like I want to give my money to GoFundMe people that I know that's going to go directly to the people that need the money. But I think more than anything, it's like as a Los Angeles person, as a Californian, as an American, I think that to me the biggest thing is just like other parts of the country we just want support and and your thoughts. And I don't need to hear about whatever political issue that's going on. It's more of like just like we're American. Like after 9/11, we're all New Yorkers.
Well, brother, I'm a pastor. I've been one for 30 years, and there isn't a day that doesn't go by that I don't pray for you, my friend, and your family, but also praying for the community of Los Angeles.
And I think that's the most important thing, because if there's a hurricane in Florida, I'm not worried about Governor DeSantis. I'm worried about the people. I'm thinking,
absolutely.
I hope everything's okay. I hope whatever we could do. We should send as much money as we can as a country, as a state, or whatever. And it's that's all I ask for other people. It's just is the grace to give us don't worry about my politics, but worry about everyone is safe and happy.
I absolutely love that. That's exactly why we're having this show today. And I think that anybody out there that have active podcast shows that do have a humanitarian feeling for people going through these crisis events should get out there, find people like I did with you that are right in the middle of these kind of things, and get this conversation working so we can alert people to the need, so we can alert people to what needs to be the priority. You're right. Politicizing just does nothing but piss me off. This isn't a political moment. What this is a moment of fellow countrymen in need. And we need to be focused on that. And I have about 12 years working with Salvation Army. That's another great institution, by the way, that you can comfortably and safely put your money into. They're out in the front lines every single day. The Red Cross is another one. And I really, truly believe in them because I've worked with them and I understand exactly where that money goes. And it doesn't get frittered away to corporate executives. It hits the front line. The majority of it does.
Yeah.
But your point about reaching out with the people that you were discussing again, do you have any recommendations?
No, I mean, no one in particular, but there's so many stories out there. I think that you could easily find it if you looked a little bit.
So let me ask you this, Koji, do you have anybody personally that was affected that works in the industry that's now having to find a home, that's out there struggling, someone we can all be praying for?
I don't have anybody in the industry. I mean, I have there are baseball players that I know that everybody lost their things. I have there's a team that the whole facility got taken out and stuff. So there are a lot of those players. I don't know anybody in the industry, but I know on the other side of the town, which is Palisades. So the weird thing about LA is that it's it's huge.
Yeah.
The majority of Hollywood people live on that side of town. So. And the majority of people that I know are probably, they would be most affected is people on that side. The people on my side of town are much more of the real real people who aren't in Hollywood. We all most of the people around here have real regular jobs and stuff. I'm one of the few people that still works in the industry from out here. But yeah, so not really, but everyone's affected though in LA. I mean, every meeting I go to, the first 10 minutes is talking about the fires and how affected you were and what happened and stuff like that.
I can only imagine the overwhelming support of people that have people in their lives that have lost every single thing. I'm sure that there's a union of people coming together that are aiding and assisting these that are
I heard from another team that that on a high school team here near Pasadena, that 4 kids lost everything, and everyone on that team just gave all their clothes or all the extra clothes and for the kids and gave stuff, and they were and a team, we know baseball teams are like families.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that everyone rallied around these kids and families and really tried to help them. And there were, even on my team, there were families that were in more danger than my family, and it turned out that they were fine. And so we're we're thankful for them. But we were constantly texting each other on our chats and making sure that everyone is fine, and making we made my home available for everybody, because once we had power, and having people want to come over if they need to have a place and all of that good stuff.
Koji, it's that heart that you have, and I've mentioned this to you before in text between us. That's what drew me to you the night that we met when I was down there doing that interview that day, and you took the time to come and see me, take a look at my project that I wanted to put into a film, TV series type of a thing. And it's just your compassion, your understanding, and your recognition of need for certain things. The story that I came to you with, I had talked to other movie producers. I had disqualified everybody, as Victor was explaining to you that night when we were there at the Sheraton. But I knew when I met you that you were a humanitarian. I loved the way you talked about your son, the pride that you had in that young man, the way that you took the time to a total stranger and listened to me explain my story. But most importantly, the reason why I wanted my story to be put into motion picture phase or a series was to show the true Cinder redemption and to let people see a documented journey of that. And boy, you jumped right on it, Koji, and I'll never, ever forget that night. And I'm so grateful to have you in my life and so grateful that you're spearheading this project and having AJ on. How do you like working with him, by the way? How's that going?
AJ's great. He's actually about to jump into a couple of movies, so we kind of we're going to start writing, or I'm starting to write soon on the project, and we're gonna get it done soon.
I'm so excited. Can't wait for the world to see it. Well, listen, I don't really have any more questions at the time. I'm glad that you and your family are safe. I'm glad that the people that you're affiliated with are looking out for those small baseball families that lost everything. That's the kind of stuff that we need to do as one in a group. And the other thing is I'm glad to hear that the fires are now getting into a contained stage. Boy, I got to tell you, brother, I was really worried about you when I was sitting there watching that news live on January 7th and 8th. And 9th.
I was worried about me too. No, I was worried about
I know you were.
Well, and the funniest part was, I think that, or funny in quotes, is that, ultimately, I know a lot of people think about what they would do with a go bag, but like I was telling my wife, the only thing that was important was my dog and my child.
Absolutely.
And everything else could be replaced. I didn't even take my computer's this computer that I'm talking is the most important thing in my world to me, because that's my work. Everything I have is there. But I left. It wasn't important to me. I got my dog in the car, I got my child in the car, and we were about to take off. Yeah. And ultimately, I think it's important to have those kinds of moments in our lives where we start to think about what's important, what's not important, and and it's good. I'm thankful for that opportunity to realize like everything I have is wonderful, but it could all be replaced. The things that can't be replaced is my dog and my son.
That's exactly right.
Those are things to me.
Well, as we wrap up this show today, I want you to know that we're all keeping you in thought and prayer. Every one of you down there in the Los Angeles area, the world is looking at this. I get a lot of messages, and I hear a lot of people saying, pray for the people affected by the fire down there. So I think at this point, God is stepping in. He's stopped the winds. He's getting ready to bring some rain. We've got aerial assault now on an hourly basis, just rolling around the clock down there. That's really putting it back. So we all care about all of you. We love all of you, and we're there for every single one of you, Koji. And just please stay safe. And I thank God for you every single day.
Thank you for having me on the project.
Yeah, it's so wonderful seeing you, Koji, and thank you for coming on the show today. Okay, folks, well, that wraps up another episode today, and I'd like to take this moment to thank each and every one of you for taking your time to catch our show. Now, if you like these shows, I would ask that you would please hit like, share, and subscribe. It's so important to us that we get these messages out, and we understand that these are graphic, almost toxic interviews. But, this is the kind of impact that we feel is needed in order to make sure that people understand the significance of the problems that we are confronted within our own country and around the globe. So I'm going to say at this time that I love you all. God bless you all. Hasta luego, y vaya con Dios, and go Victors.